continue.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Raksha Tuba, and this is Parvati Nair. We will be hosting this two-day winter school program on behalf of IEEE Census Council Hyderabad chapter and Pitspilani Hyderabad campus. I extend a heartfelt welcome to all of you today for this two-day winter school program on printed sensors for a smarter, healthier, and connected industrial world. This winter school has been thoughtfully designed to bring together students, academicians, researchers, and industry professionals to explore the rapidly developing domain of printed and flexible sensor technologies. Over the next few days, we believe this program will provide a vibrant platform for exchanging ideas, exploring innovations, and building meaningful professional connections. Before we proceed, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our distinguished guests on the dais, Professor Gunalago R.N., Professor Sanjit Gold, Dr. Satya Narayana, Mr. NGPL Narayana, Professor Shweta Agarwal, and Professor Harish Rich.
We will now begin the traditional lamp lighting ceremony, a symbol of dispelling darkness through knowledge. I request our distinguished guests to kindly come forward to light the lamp.
ఇందాక వేరే వేరే ప్లే చేసాడు. సతీష్
Sir, please.
once. Okay.
We also have, Mr. Lim. We also have our digital lab, right?
So now we'll also have an ECL-based electrochemiluminescence-based digital lamp lighting developed by MMNE Lab, which will display SPS, meaning school on printed sensors. I request Dr. Satyanarayana to light the digital lamp.
ECL video. Just close it now.
This one.
This one.
This one don't confuse what's correct.
We have in
So this is actually a chemical-based reaction that is going on. So when two chemicals react together, you can see the light.
but it is not seen on light.
Play here.
Oh.
So this says SPS, school on printed sensors. Thank you, Divya.
ఇది కూడా క్లోజ్ చేసాడు.
I now invite Professor Gunalago R.N., Associate Professor at Pitspilani Hyderabad campus, and Chair of the IEEE Census Council Hyderabad chapter to deliver the welcome address.
Stop sharing.
Honorable Chief Guest, Guest of Honor, respected dignitaries of the dais, eminent speakers, faculty colleagues, dear participants, a warm welcome to all of you. So on behalf of the IEEE Census Council Hyderabad chapter, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this winter school on printed sensors for a smarter, healthier, connected and industrial world. So we are delighted to bring together academicians, researchers, industry experts, learners, and read on a common platform. So sensors, it forms the backbone of the modern technology, enabling achievements in healthcare,
smart manufacturing, environmental monitoring, and connected systems. Apart from that, in that, the printed and flexible sensors in particular, they represent a significant shift by offering a scalable, cost-effective, and versatile solutions for the next generation applications. So this winter school aims to provide insights into these emerging technologies by fostering knowledge, exchange, and collaboration. So this IEEE Sensors Council remains committed to advancing the sensor research, education, and innovation. Through initiatives like this, our Hyderabad chapter strives to bridge academia, industry, young researchers, and students. So I sincerely thank our chief guest, Dr. Satyanarayana, our guest of honor, Sir MGPL Narayana. Two IEEE distinguished lecturers are here, Professor Sanket Goyal and Professor Shweta. So for all our eminent speakers, so for sharing their time and expertise. I also acknowledge Bristol and Hyderabad campus for providing the institute facilities, the organizing committee members, volunteers, and supporters for this dedicated efforts. I encourage all the participants here to actively engage in the sessions and make most of this learning opportunity. I am confident the deliberations will be enriching and impactful. With these words, I once again welcome you all and wish the winter school every success to all of us. Thank you. So one more small piece of information. So these sessions are being recorded. We are also going live streaming in a YouTube channel. So maybe we will be sharing with you, so you can also share with your friends.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for setting the tone for today's middle school. I now request Professor Harish B. Deshit, Head of Department of Tripoli, Discipline Hyderabad campus, to address the gathering.
Good morning. Dr. Satyanarayana, Director AIT RCA, Mr. Narayana, Chair, IEEE Hyderabad Section, Professor Shweta, Sanket, Professor Kolalapu, Ashish, and all the student participants. This we have got an opportunity to host a very useful program on printed sensor, especially given that we have quite an active group in that area, that department. And often at times, rather than attending very large conferences, it also makes a good amount of perhaps a sense to attend very focused discussions where experts will deliberate on aspects related to that area. I have been given to understand that hands-on sessions are also planned along with the talks. And I hope that all the participants will enjoy this winter school. I also happy seeing a very full house and hope that the deliberations that we get here will pave way for a much longer collaboration even after the program ends. I would also like to extend an invitation on behalf of the department and the campus for participants, especially external participants, to visit our department and see the lab, and also visit our institute and see our beautiful campus. With that, I also congratulate the organizers for making the initiative for organizing the program and hope everybody has an enjoyable deliberation over the next 2 days. So thank you so much.
I now request Professor Sanket Goyal to brief on the activities of IEEE Sensor Council as the distinguished lecturer of the IEEE Sensor Council.
Hello, good morning, everyone. All the guests sitting on the right side and participants on the left side. So, as a event which is sponsored by IEEE Sensors Council, it is my duty to share some of the activities which are going on by the IEEE Sensors Council. So I'll be very quick, 2-3 minutes, and I'll share all these slides with all of you. The idea is that just to make you abreast on what are the different activities, events are going on under the umbrella of IEEE Sensors Council. You may see Professor Shweta Agarwal is there. She is also quite active in IEEE Sensor Council, and she's a distinguished lecturer of IEEE Sensor Council, and her talk will be right after the inaugural session. Wait, change. This one. Okay, so this was founded in 1999. I hope all of you know that the IEEE itself has almost 500,000 members across the world. And in India itself, there are close to 95,000 members. So around 20% members come from our country itself. And they do a lot of activities. Of course, sensor is the common denominator for all the activities. And you can see that there are 26 IEEE member societies which are associated with IEEE Sensor Council one way or the other. Yeah, so our current president is Professor Anil Roy. He is based out of Chandigarh. And the next year's president will be Professor Srinivas Dadigappa. He is from the Northeastern University, Boston. He'll be taking over after Professor Roy will complete his term. And you can see some of the other dignitaries, they come from different parts, different continents of the world, representing IEEE Census Council in a big way. And that's how we can also outreach and do many events in different parts of the world. A lot of activities, of course, conferences, publications, a lot of technical activities, a lot of social activities we do. And some of the activities I'll show you. These are the 36 member societies where the council is associated. You can see that be it Photonic Society, the Instrumentation and Measurement, and Ocean Engineering Society, many societies where IEEE Sensor Council has one way or the other association. In terms of the conferences, one big conference which we do every year. Next conference will be in Netherlands in October. The Flex conference will be in July, and the initial conference will be in the month of May in Florida. So we request all of you to please consider submitting your papers and join as much as possible. Just next month, less than 3 weeks from today, we have a big conference in Delhi, Applied Sensing Conference. And I hope that many of you are already registered. If not, please do so and join it. The conference will not just have the typical paper presentation. It will have a startup event, a lot of standard event, and many showcasing of the activities from different parts of the world. Last year, it was in Hyderabad, and there were like around 450 odd participants, just to tell you the numbers. Again, this biosensor event will be in Thailand, and IEEE Cafe will be in Italy. And there are many more events which are happening throughout the year. Yeah, so you can see that some of the location of the IEEE Census Conference. So it keeps moving between 3 major verticals: Americas, North and South America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. So we keep on having conference in this cycle every year and year after that. Publications, there are many publications IEEE Census Council is sponsoring or supporting, but one major journal which I would like to mention is the IEEE Census Journal. Just to give you the volume, just last year, there were close to 4,000 publications which were made in IEEE Census Journal. There were almost 4,040,000 download from the IEEE Census Journal. So you can see the width and depth of the journal. And now it is the most downloaded and most published papers in the sensor category. I'm sure many of you know what kind of sensor journal we are talking about, but this is something which is on top when we compare with others. Yeah, and then we have a sensor alert. You can please subscribe to these newsletters. And in terms of committee, we not only have this standard committee, but we also have committee on women in sensors, young professionals, and collaboration and engagement. So please try to join all these committees. Industry licensing, standards committee, and of course, technical committee, national sensors and systems. Yeah, and we have committee on flexible and printed electronics. As I told you, we have a conference on flexible and printed electronics later this year. And Professor Anil Rai again is working on sensors in practice. There are a lot of events, a lot of in-depth participation across the world. You can see that India is very busy. Sensor activities are happening in a huge manner in our country. So I request all of you to please join census activities in different ways as you can. Yeah, and IEEE Sensor Council also has launched a DL program, District Lecture Program, almost 10 years ago. So under which program, almost 3 to 4 new distinguished lecturers are selected every year, and currently there are 14 DLs. So quickly, I'll give you a snapshot of. Yeah, you can see that there are 4 to 5 DLs which are selected every year. And all the lists, their bios, their selected topics of lectures are mentioned on our website. So if you would like to invite them, please feel free to contact directly to the DLs. And also there is a proper committee which can even sponsor their travel and their visits and so on. So please do contact those distinguished lecturers. We have a YouTube education channel. Please subscribe to that. Yeah, that's about it. So we have a lot of ways we can actively participate and work with all of you to make sure that sensor activities and sensor research goes down to the bottom of the pyramid. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Sanket Goel, for highlighting the activities of the Sensor Council. I now invite Mr. MGPL Narayana, Chair of the IEEE Hyderabad Section, to address the audience and speak about IEEE, its vision, and the activities within the Hyderabad Section.
Thank you. That's a very wonderful presentation by Professor Goel on the Sensor Council. I truly appreciate the coverage that it has across the different societies of IEEE. Good morning, and all of you, and nice to be here. Respected dignitaries on the dais, distinguished speakers, and mentors, and dear scholars and students. Good morning to all of you. On behalf of IEEE Hyderabad Section, it is my pleasure to be here at this inaugural of IEEE Census Council sponsored winter school on printed sensors for smart, healthier, and connected industry. I thank the IEEE Census Council and the organizing team for curating this timely and meaningful program. Of course, winter is getting over, but still, looks like someone's already there. Yes. So we often speak about Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and smart systems. At a deeper level, however, we are living in a cybernetic age, an age defined by feedback, adaptation, and self-regulation. In this world, sensors play a central role. They play a very critical role, and they are not merely devices that measure. They are our ears, eyes, and nerves of cybernetic systems, and enabling systems to sense their environment, learn from it, and respond intelligently. Every cybernetic system, whether in healthcare, industry, or smart infrastructure, begins with sensing. Without reliable and context-aware sensors, there can be no meaningful feedback, and no control, and no adaptation. Printed and flexible sensors are especially important because they allow sensing to be embedded everywhere, close to the human body, with materials and across the distributed environments. This fundamental changes how systems are conceived, designed, and governed. Over the past year, the IEEE Census Council activities in Hyderabad section have steadily focused on engaging students and researchers through each technical talks, workshop, and focused events, with an emphasis on emerging sensing technologies and hands-on learning. This winter school represents a natural progression of that effort, moving from awareness to deeper understanding and practical exposure. It is also personally a pleasure to return to BITS Pilani Hyderabad campus. This campus holds special memories for me as we hosted IndyCar in 2011. I still have to figure out the orientation that I was having earlier with the current context here. I still have to go around and see where exactly I conducted the programs in 2011. This campus is so much well developed now than what it was 15 years back. Coming back of many years and seeing the growth of the academic ecosystem is both nostalgic and encouraging for me. What makes this winter school particularly valuable is its strong emphasis on hands-on experience. For students and research scholars, working directly with sensing technologies helps you move from thinking about isolated components to thinking through systems. How sensing, communication, computation, and control come together to create intelligent behavior. A brief word about IEEE is already well covered by Professor earlier. IEEE is a global platform that brings together technology, professionalism, and societal responsibility. Through its council, chapters, and student activities, IEEE encourages engineers to think not only about how systems work, but also about how they should work in service of society. The IEEE Hyderabad section, where we all belong here in Hyderabad, is actively supports such learning-centric initiatives that build both the technical capability and systems thinking. With about 21 chapters, two councils, systems council is one side, and three affinity groups, and two subsections. Hyderabad, the main section, one is Guntur, another one is Anantapur, and the other one is so many student branch. One such is here itself. Hyderabad is a very vibrant, section. Section in the whole world, not just in India. This is the seventh largest in the world, having 10,000 plus members, full members, I mean, professional members as well as student members included actually. So the vibrancy of IEEE Hyderabad section is perhaps most visible in the way student programs are conducted. With over 10,000 members and a top 7 global ranking, the section offers students an unparalleled platform through hackathons, winter schools, congresses, industry visits, and research-oriented workshops to engage with emerging areas such as AI, quantum technologies, power systems, cyber security, and sustainability. What makes this especially powerful is the culture of mentorship and collaboration, where students learn alongside professionals and researchers, gaining not just technical knowledge but confidence, perspective, and purpose. Those are some of the leadership qualities that one inculcates. This is the kind of environment where learning extends beyond classroom and where future technologists begin to see themselves as leaders. To the students here today, as we work with sensors, remember that you are shaping the feedback loops that will govern future systems. Because most future systems are mostly feedback oriented. That is the way the world will go for conservation of energy and resources. Design them with rigor, responsibility, and purpose. The impact of your work will extend far beyond devices into how systems behave and how society experiences technology. I congratulate Professor Ponnalagar and entire organizing team for their dedication in organizing this winter school. I wish the program a good success and hope it inspires many of you to contribute meaningfully to sensing and cybernetic systems in the year ahead. Thank you, and I wish you all productive and inspiring winter school. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those encouraging words, sir, and for IEEE's continuous support in organizing this winter school. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. It is my privilege and honor to invite Dr. J.V. Satyanarayan, our chief guest, to deliver the inaugural address and formally inaugurate this winter school.
Shri M.G.P.L. Narayana Chair, IEEE Hyderabad Section. Professor Harish V. Dixit, HOD, Triple. Professor Ponnalagar, Chair, IEEE Sensors Council. Professor Sanket Goel, IEEE Sensor Council. Professor Shweta Agarwal from IEEE Sensors Council. And all the faculty members and students, a very good morning. At the outset, I would like to thank IEEE Sensor Society as well as BITS Hyderabad for inviting me here. I just want to say, as I entered, I found this as a very beautiful campus. Really, it's like a beautiful oasis in the middle of nowhere. In fact, I was there in Purdue University in May I thought, this is one of the best campus. We have nothing like this in our country. So today I find this campus no less than the best campuses in the world. Honestly, I envy you all students that you are part of this campus. We move around here, right? Then, of course, uh, coming to the theme of this winter school, really it's a very interesting and very futuristic subject. I think the first layer of technology anywhere, in most application domains, be it industry, the automotive or aviation or the defense. The first layer of technology is the sensors actually. And particularly the background from where I come from, sensors play a major role. There are plethora of sensors in the systems that we okay. And in these systems, particularly with most of the embedded systems, a lot of heavy compute. A key desirable feature in defense systems is the shape, weight, and volume. Compactness and minimal form factor plays a major role. Now, as you all know, compute and storage is shrinking day by day. Okay, in very small form factor, in very compact design, you can get a lot of compute, lot of memory. So in such a scenario, when you have a lot of compute in a small volume, the sensors and the interfaces to sensors, they play an important role in finally deciding how small the system is. Okay, so in fact, we have encountered many of our projects. See, the designers or the system developers, they end up with very good designs with respect to the processing power or the storage, etc. But then the size increases because of how you interface with the sensor, the cabling to the sensors, the interfaces, the sensor itself are voluminous or the power supplies, etc. So in all these cases, at least sensors they to play a major how compact they are. In fact, in resource constrained systems like the ones I mentioned, sensors being integrated seamlessly with the rest of the components in the design, it makes a huge difference. And I think in this context, printed sensors, which, as I understand, can be produced on a variety of surfaces like plastics, papers, textiles, etc., and even metals, they play a major role. Okay. So I think the automotive and the military sectors, they would really look for not just the IoT wearable devices, etc. The automotive and military sector, they would look forward to a lot of outcomes from the printed sensors coming. A lot of new innovations from the printed sensors coming, which probably can be directly utilized. Okay, and there are some additional requirements for defense and military systems like high reliability, maintainability, and the ability to withstand harsh environment. So I think the sensors community can start looking in these directions also. So the kind of sensors, if you want me to list out, which are important in these sectors are the temperature sensors, vibration sensors, strain sensors, voltage monitoring, etc. So can the printed sensors community, can they do something which can make the life of the overall embedded system developer easy with respect to interfacing various sensors. Then there is a lot of work going on today. The world is talking about UAVs and loitering. So these are systems again where resources are heavily constrained. Okay, so again, the volume available, the weight that can be, the weight is, it directly affects the endurance of these autonomous systems, how far they can go on. Okay, so there again, and printed sensors can make a huge difference. Then robotics is coming in a big way. In industry, of course, industrial automation it has been there for a long time, but now in future in all the militaries of the world, robotics and unmanned autonomous robots, humanoids, and all they will come in a big way. So there, a lot of work has already been done, and systems have been realized where audio and visual perception in these platforms is well established. But what people are working on is haptic feedback, like touch, etc. And if the robot has to hold some item or grip some item, it has to first sense the temperature. What is the surface of what is the texture of the material? What should be the gripping force that should be applied such that the object can be lifted easily without damaging the object. So these are all things where I think printed sensors likely can make a major difference. And if you go again, go back to discussing the military applications. To talk about the soldier of tomorrow, okay, the soldier in the battlefield, he will be quite different. There will be a paradigm shift in how the soldier will look in future. The soldier will be part of a huge network. He will be one element in a huge network consisting of information sources from variety of sources like satellite data or from different kinds of RF sources, sensors distributed geographically across a huge area, even on the body of the soldier, on the suit which he wears, there will be a variety of sensors. And this information captured by these sensors, which are on the soldier, that can actually be transmitted to central locations where a lot of analytics can be done and potential threats can be identified and engagement scenarios can be identified. Okay, so I think a lot of wearable sensors on the soldier are required in the future. There also, I think, printed sensors should play a major role. So my message here would be that academia, industry, and R&D organization, they should form a synergistic amalgamation, come together and work hand in hand. And probably I would say academic institutions can make a major contribution. And anyway, it's very well known that a lot of innovations are coming today from the academic institution within our country. But I would very humbly submit here that apart from taking these innovations to the research paper, okay, publications, the academic institutions can also look forward on how to do a proof of concept. Like for every good paper or publication, please do identify how it can be realized in hardware, and at least a basic proof of concept can be demonstrated in the laboratory. Further to this, R&D organizations and industry will be ready to take it forward into a product. Okay, so that should be the goal. Okay, or in fact, many of the R&D organizations like mine, where I'm currently working, and the industries, they don't have the luxury to probably invest time and effort on core basic research. So that is where the academic institutions can pitch in, and some of the areas which we would like to work on for futuristic systems, those can be taken up by premier institutions like BITS and other institutions associated with IEEE. And so that is where, apart from uh, mm, uh, taking it to the publication stage, I would very humbly submit here that please take it forward to, realizing the proof of concept. And one more thing I would just like to say, that let us go one step ahead of, copying or trying to, copying is not the right word, but trying to follow the more advanced nations. Okay, this technology has been proven in this particular nation or this institute, so let us try to do, let us try to do one more than that, in the sense that let us not reinvent what is already done. Probably the best way to look at this whole game of innovation and technology exchange across nations is, if some premier institution or some R&D organization in some corner of the world has done a great piece of research. Let us say they have done X. Let me not try to do X. Let me try to, or let me not even try to do X dash. Let me try to do Y, so that I can say that I have Y with me, you give me X. I don't know X. You give me X, I will give you Y. So that we are in a negotiable position with the more advanced technology groups. And also, we should see that the technology which we develop together as academic institutions, as R&D organizations, or even the industry, it is future proof. So let us look at the requirements of various sectors in maybe 5 to 10 years down the line. What could be the requirement? Try to anticipate and make our design such that they cater for the requirements of the futuristic system. So I would like to just end my speech with these famous words said by some great soul, that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Okay, so I think this is the way how we can define the future. Future will be technology, the leaders of tomorrow who are secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Satyanarayana, for that enlightening address. We are honored by your presence and grateful for your valuable time. To all our chief guests for the event, I would like to call upon Professor Sangeet Well to present the bouquet and memento to Dr. Satyanarayana.
Thank you, Professor Gould. I would also like to invite Professor Harishri Dixit to present the bouquet and memento to our guest of honor, Mr. MGPL.
Now I invite Professor Panagaru to present the bouquet and memento to Professor Shweta Agarwal.
Now, request Priyanka to join us, to give the moment of appreciation to our HOD for providing the maybe lab facilities and maybe institutional support.
Now, I would like to invite Dr. Priyanka to the podium to lead the vote of thanks for the inaugural session.
Thank you. Good morning, all of you. Respected Chief Guest, Dr. J.V. Satyanarayan Garu, Honorable Guest of Honor, Mr. MGPL Narayan Rao Garu, esteemed dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, research scholars, students, a very good morning to all of you. It is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks for this inaugural session. I sincerely thank our Chief Guest, Dr. J.V. Satyanarayan Garu, for his inspiring inaugural address, which has set a strong and motivating tone for this program. I extend my heartfelt thanks to our guest of honor, Mr. MGPL Narayan Garu, for gracing the occasion and for his encouraging words. My sincere gratitude to Professor Ponnalapu, Chair, IEEE Censor Council, Hyderabad Chapter, for the welcome address and her leadership in organizing this event, and to Professor Harish Dixit, HOD EEE, for his constant support. I also thank Professor Sanket Goel for briefing us on IEEE Censor Council activities. I express my appreciation to all the distinguished speakers, organizing committee members, faculty, volunteers, research scholars, and participants for their valuable contributions and support. With this, I thank everyone once again and wish the program great success and have a very good learning outcomes at the end of the program. Thank you.
This brings our inaugural session to a close, and we will begin our technical session after the tea break. So please assemble for a group photograph in the auditorium foyer. I request all the participants for a group photograph in the auditorium foyer. So the technical sessions will be after the tea break, so you can take the photograph, have a tea, and then come back. Thank you.
We can take one photo here. Then take another. Madam. Parikshit sir. Prabhakar.
Once again.
That will be down to the program. So let's
Auditorium foyer is downstairs, so you can go down if you want. Thank you.
Without you, everything is complete. Hello, Parikshit. You can take it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. You will say, Selection also quite a lot. Right, Prabhakar?
No, I met.
We met. This basic.
Photos are now taking time. Thanks for joining.
I mentioned that I think we have followed your work and PhD scholars, so then that I, yeah, I requested to invite you. That will be good starting. Very shy. Just go for it. Question. They want to put it.
ఆయన పిలవండి దీపక్ మాట్లాడతాను ఏదో ఓపెన్ నేను చూస్తున్నాను టైం చేస్తూ మళ్ళీ లైవ్ లో ఉంది కదా ఇబ్బంది అందుకని లైవ్ రికార్డింగ్ అయితే ప్లీజ్ రికార్డింగ్ అయితే అవుతున్నాయి లైవ్ అవుతుంది రికార్డింగ్ కూడా అవుతుంది ఏం కాదు మినిమైజ్ చేసి మళ్ళీ అది పెట్టేద్దాం.
ఓకే.
ఆ.
ఓడి అమ్మ ఇదేంది? అరే
ప్రెజెంటేషన్స్ కన్నా స్టాప్ కొట్టండి. స్టాప్
స్టాపా?
స్టేజ్
హడావిడి చేస్తారు మీరు. ఈడ ఎస్ అగర్వాల్ ఆమె ఎవరు? ఆమె కొత్తది ఉంది ఈడ. ఇది రెడీగా పెట్టుకోవాలి. తీసేసి వీడియో ఒకవేళ తీసేదమ్మా. ఇది ఎవరిది?
సంకేత్ సార్ అయిపోయింది. ఏది
అది
అయిపోయింది.
అయిపోయింది. సంగీత ఇదే అనుకుంటానా?
అయిపోయింది కాబట్టి క్లోజ్ చేసుకోండి. ఇంకేం లేదు కదా, అన్ని చెప్పేసాడు.
చెప్పేసి నేను అయిపోయింది.
క్లోజ్ చేసేయండి.
ఈమె ఓపెన్ చేసి పెట్టుకుందామా? నేను అదే అడుగుతున్నా, మీరు నాకు
ఈమె లాస్ట్ అంటే వీళ్ళ షెడ్యూల్ ఉందా? షెడ్యూల్ ఇంకా నెక్స్ట్
నువ్వు అట్లా నాకన్నా కెమెరా లైవ్ లోనే నడుస్తుంది. మళ్ళీ మొత్తం వస్తాం. తిరిగిరా షెడ్యూల్ అని చెప్పి మొత్తం తిరుగుతున్నా డెస్క్లు అన్ని. బాగా నువ్వు నన్ను అడుగు, షెడ్యూల్ అడుగు. అడగచ్చు కదా నువ్వు. నువ్వు ఫిక్స్ ఎంప్లాయ్ గా నువ్వు ఇట్లా చేస్తే నేనేమో So just a minute. श्वेता अग्रवाल मैम का है।
श्वेता अग्रवाल सर, उसके बाद है
Sonu Gandhi.
सोना गांधी।
सोनिया गांधी का नहीं है ना?
We have to ask.
ओके ठीक है।
And then Kaveri Jain you have.
ठीक है, हम लोग अभी
We will ask.
Ask them to give it now, sir.
No, ma'am. Yes, I have. Probably they have just sent went for this photo. They will come back.
Okay.
Can we get your presentation?
I already emailed Professor Panela.
One look, ma'am. Okay, we'll get it.
Okay,
You can please.
sure. Anywhere.
Have tea also.
Okay.
Reach down.
I'll get some water.
Probably call one look.
వాళ్ళ ప్రెసెంటేషన్ కాపీ మ్యామ్
विशेष मैम
My complete doesn't.
from that laptop complete is being
Okay. I mean. Okay. Yeah. I will.
అప్పుడు ఎక్స్టెండెడ్ అని నడుస్తుందా?
డూప్లికేటెడ్ ఎక్స్టెండెడ్ ఇప్పుడైతే ఎక్స్టెండెడ్ ఉన్నాయి. ఎందుకంటే మనం అది కాపీ చేస్తాం. ఒక్క నిమిషం. ఇదే కదా శ్వేత అగర్వాల్.
అదే వస్తాయి. అదైతే నేను చెప్పాను వర్క్ టేబుల్ చేయిస్తాను నేను ఇవాళ ఇచ్చాను
Sir, it is working. Which I have last week. Okay. So let's maybe do this. No, no, what is it called? How about you?
So, but you always keep bothering. So you see what's happening about the career. So, parents are promote. You parents first so we have single. मुझे तो हम तभी शादी में गए थे दोबारा बात में तब फास्ट हो गया सब मेरे को जाते नहीं होता आप भी तो पानी रख For your interaction.
Let me shiver and see if I
They definitely just did it.
I know.
Yeah, yeah. They will learn. Yeah, I know to give you the. Icon. With the now this move to Hyderabad University.
You can cover your time. Yes, that's right.
Sorry. So, why did you move to Hyderabad?
6 years.
6 years. While 11 years, 6 years, and you went. Yeah, that's what I told. No regret. That was a good actually. Yeah. That's I tried my mind. It want to be very, very nice. So,
Oh, yeah.
and I started to live back at Rockwood.
Oh.
ऐसे जाते हो ले आते हो वापस और तो आपको बता उसके मतलब को अलग है अलग ही है straight very nice very
Almost what 11 degrees.
okay so this week that's good but it depends extremely there but the best thing is not do it it's on. If you are under a shade like that, even if it's like 40 degrees, that's it's not good. Yeah, I know, Singapore. I never used to get full sleeve shirts. It can never be it. Singapore was different. But Singapore, I was telling that we'll be talking about differences.
I'm a hardcore microeconomic person.
That was as an item.
Some ladies coming to you. Some.
My dad, I don't know the chemistry department, but
I know some.
my father. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Still my relatives working as a kid. Long. I used to go there some events, some functions. After the guy.
I've never been to much of that site.
You should see it.
Yeah.
And still, actually, I've not seen enough. Very.
I know, yeah.
In spite of 11 years of going on, it's still possible.
I'm planning to do this, my son will be like it down.
Yeah, definitely. Which, and then Diwali does everything. This is that side.
Yeah. And even done.
Very. This small company. But most of the one is 4 hours. I remember like only 30 weeks to consider that and all of us. Yeah. Yeah, so it is very tricky. I see it from this one. Dad was a judge. So they got this all this NGC price and it's only she must be government guest.
Oh, okay.
Where is it? Yeah, no, my problem is this. It's from the so they are the standard science section. Chair is Bali and so it's about now.
joined and all the TCS. But working with different companies. We really do some contracts.
You want, can I shut up?
Sure. No, you take some, otherwise they will.
She is doing everything.
Bits करके होगा ये है कावेरी जैन
Yeah.
MFDP really bits kill
Yeah. Okay.
Our mobile speech,
That was in
like phone network, because I like.
I'll just
check it.
Check it.
That was like.
I can't.
I joined.
Check it out. This one only.
the कावेरी chain में
Okay. Take your pen. Would anyone?
there is one more person for those things
You are in a big city.
Now, yeah.
first
After that, here it is.
this is second speaker one more is this we have to ask I guess
I don't know why.
I saw how you tackle.
That's what. So that, but for the pay, so they don't. Yeah. That's it. What's your chair?
okay
Sorry, checking your social media. And if you have children, will discuss. So, sorry, okay, sorry, sir, then. Feel call me. And time's out, so. Not this really one. You can keep things inside. I'll push the participants. Hello, ma'am.
She wanted to say anything on that one.
Let me see.
Yes, we pass. So can start the video. You can start. I have added it. An engineer cell is waiting. Engineers can make sure that everyone has come inside the month. It's everyone has everyone is in. Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. That's it. Okay.
That side you can. You start, I'm gonna.
Dear participants, we now move into the technical sessions which form the heart of this school. Session 1 will be chaired by Professor Gunalagu R.N., Associate Professor at IEEE Hyderabad Campus and Chair of IEEE Central Council, Hyderabad Chapter, along with Dr. Priyanka Veeramusu, Senior Assistant Professor at DNR, DJIE, and Vice Chair of IEEE Council, Hyderabad Chapter. I now request our session chair to kindly come forward and lead this.
And we can now silence. So just like absolute privilege to introduce Professor Shrita Agarwala, who is the Associate Dean at Ahmedabad University, and also our IEEE Census Council Distinguished Lecturer. So today's first technical session, we will be starting with her. So Professor Shrita leads the Green Materials and Devices Laboratory. She is a pioneer in sustainable electronics and biodegradable devices with over 80 peer-reviewed publications in the PhD from National University of Singapore. She is doing immensely in the field of sensors. So there's much more, but in the interest of time, I'm limiting. So I'll invite Mrs. Shweta to take over the session. Because of the camera and live streaming. Okay. So no, stand here. Yeah, okay. But you can use this.
Okay, I'll use this. Thank you so much for the kind invitation and the kind introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My first time in Hyderabad. So, and as some of you rightly said, it's a beautiful campus. So congratulations to you. So the topic of my talk today is going to be slightly different, maybe thought-provoking for youngsters like you. And I want you to churn the ideas in your head and take home the message of what we should do for the future innovation. The title is Living with Electronics, because electronics is the area which is not going anywhere, as we have already heard, from DRDO to telecommunication to AI compute. Everyone will need electronics. But how are we dealing with electronics? What are we doing with it is something that I'm going to talk about today. I have to tell you? No.
Just me.
Right? Okay. So look at the figure on the screen here. It's a wooden chair. How many of you think this wooden chair is a sustainable green solution? Raise your hands. Okay, quite a few of you. It's wood, right? So you would expect it comes from the trees, bio-derived, completely, perfectly fine. You should get throw away and it will not do any harm. But let me give you some facts. This is not actually completely biodegradable or sustainable for the earth. Now, some of you will argue, well, recycling, reusing is one way of trying to look at these things. But yes, you can give this chair to your family, pass it down to your kids, so and so forth, 30, 40, 50 years. But what happens after that? It eventually lands up in a landfill. And the reason why it's not completely degradable is because right now in the furniture industry, we are using a lot of glues, toxic materials, which are not bio-friendly or environmentally earth-friendly. So even something as benign or something that you think is completely green as a wooden chair is actually not sustainable. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have at least one drawer full of electronics, unused electronics lying somewhere in your house, right? Everyone is waiting for the next iPhone, even though their phone is working, Samsung, so and so forth. Now, have you actually ever thought what happens to these electronics? What happens to the batteries that you throw away? The ones that stop working. So, if you look at it's a very interesting paper by a Nature, which was published a few years back. It's basically the global human mass that we all build together in the name of innovation actually exceeds the human living biomass on this planet right now. And we haven't thought about this problem, right? It's just sitting and we are innovating. this point here? So this is a question I actually started to ask myself when I was doing my postdoc in Singapore. Is I'm working with electronics, I'm a trained electronics engineer. But what is happening to this electronics? What kind of materials are we using? What is the toxicity level? How much carbon footprint is this electronics bringing onto the earth? And this is basically the idea of my research, which I want to bring forth to you today on this dais. And as you scroll on your reels and look at the TikTok and the Instagram, this is what happens in the rest of the world. Whatever electronic waste is being collected, which is most of the times by the developed nations only. Developing nations, by the way, have actually no idea how much electronic waste they are collecting. This is being dumped into underdeveloped and developing countries like ours. And what people are doing with this is without the right processing. They are actually burning them, not good for the environment. So you see AQI, you talked about in the news, right? But imagine this AQI will be 100 times more if you start to burn the electronics that you have in your hand, okay? Then people are dumping it in water, contamination to underground water. It's a big problem in African countries right now. People are burning, leaving it unprocessed. So you imagine these open processors being exposed to heat, temperature, light, snow, and the amount of contamination they are bringing to the environment. WHO released a report 3 years back, the first of its kind, saying that this is just not a problem of landfills and waste sitting on the earth. It's a human health issue. People living around these dumps are dying. They have severe conditions which cannot be cured right now. So e-waste is rising, and the way we have looked at plastic waste is once it became a big problem, we actually woke up. And unfortunate it is to see, because I've transitioned to India 4 months back only from Denmark. In Denmark, no matter what you pay, you cannot get a plastic bag. It's just a complete no. Here, unfortunately, you can pay extra money and you can still get a plastic bag. So this is the position we are for the plastic, which we know is already harmful. When I talk about electronic waste, trust me, half of the people talk to me, they are not even aware that electronics waste is a problem actually. And we are not even doing anything about it. So this is, if you look at the periodic table, lot of elements are being in electronics, from telecommunication, as I said, to the IT, new materials will be needed, but only about 10% of them are recycled. And the current recycling rate of electronics is only 2% as picked up by the developed countries. So recycling is not the answer. Reusing will help, but not really. We actually have to rethink innovation. We cannot live without electronics, that's a fact, right? And we will innovate, keep on innovating because innovation cannot stop, whether it's in telecommunication, the next sensors, whatever. But we have to do it responsibly. And that is my afterthought for all of you from this talk, is to change the way we innovate on this planet for the next generations. And when I talk about we have to change the way we innovate, these are the 3 pillars which we might have to look into the future. And this is where we, my research group is actually working on. First is looking at safe and green materials. We have to build a completely new library of electronic materials which are sustainable, green, environmentally friendly. There's no going back on that. I don't want to leave an earth full of electronics which is harmful for the next generation. We also have to look at less energy intensive process. The semiconductor industry is very, very high on carbon footprint and environmental footprint. So we have to lower that. So we have to look at new ways, move away maybe. And I'm not saying that we have to remove silicon industry or take away, but we have to complement it in some way that can actually reshape the innovation that we are doing. And finally, this is my question to all of you, innovating in the form factors. Now, if I give you a word, imagine a coaxial cable. What comes to your mind? A long dangling wire, coaxial with a plastic cover with a shield, inside is a conductor. Who wrote the book that a coaxial cable has to be like that? Why can't you think about a coaxial cable in having a new form factor? So when you have new materials which are safer for the earth, when you have new processes which are less energy intensive, actually you can redesign the electronics from scratch. Transistor doesn't have to look the way it looks today. coaxial cable, and I will give you and show you some examples where we are trying to redefine this form factor and trying to reimagine the dimensions and the shape of certain devices. So the idea is through innovation, but from ground up, trying to build a new complementary pathway for everyone. So what we call in our lab is responsible electronics. We do electronics, but we do it responsibly. And some of the keywords here on the screen would be here like biodegradable electronics, which is green, which is soft, because I showed some snapshots where I work in healthcare. Free of wires, flexible and biocompatible. But we have to remember we cannot compromise the performance. Again, the performance has to be there. But somewhere you will see that these things have to pick up it, and we are taught, not an afterthought as we take as of today. So what we do in our lab is basically 50% of my research group is concentrated on making a completely new library of sustainable green materials. Some of the examples I will show you here. And the rest is we are looking at digital manufacturing, 3D printing, and making our own printers even, trying to process these new materials through these printing techniques for printable, flexible, soft, biodegradable electronics moving forward. So as I said, most of the materials which I'm going to show today are going to be processed and converted into functional inks. We try to use green chemistries, that is our ECHO, green solvents, green chemistries, no harmful materials, and then trying to use different kind of printing, inkjet, micromold, pigmented, and trying to have room temperature processing so that we don't use any energy intensive process in the manufacturing process. So a snapshot of some of the materials which we have developed in the lab. Most of this work has been done in Denmark and Singapore, and we are continuing the same work in Hyderabad University as well. So when I give you the vision that my dream is basically replace all your electronic devices, be it the phone or the laptop with a green counterpart, a green mouse, green sensor. The idea is we would need a lot of materials. We use insulators, semiconductors, piezoelectrics, dielectrics, so on and so forth. And it's a task that we have at our hands. But we can start somewhere, right? So we have we've tried to follow some ISO standards in our work. And some of the examples is, this is the library that we have developed so far. So we have started our work with polymers, which are mostly if you look at nature. So we always go back to nature and look what are the materials available to us, which are already degradable, already have some functionality. And a lot of them are polymers, which are insulating in nature. Now, the idea for us is, can we convert this insulating properties into piezoelectric properties, try to have semiconducting properties and conducting properties. So we have different strategies, which I'll talk about, and trying to look into them. We have started working on biodegradable metals. So for contacts, we want to only have biodegradable metals in our hands, so they have breakdown mechanisms, so not using any toxic materials there. We also are now ramping our efforts on semiconductors. So we want to look at a fully transistor which has a biodegradable semiconductor. Again, these are synthetic semiconductors that we are working on without compromising on the degradability part of these materials. And of course, a lot of work will be on the insulators. So as I said, no one strategy. We are starting from ground up. So there are different strategies. There's no one recipe that fits all. But some of the snapshots of some recipes, I don't know why the picture is not here. So basically, if you go, just to give you an idea, if you look any polymer which exists in nature, nature does not like order. Things are very disordered, very haphazard in nature. Okay? Any polymer, any material which is good for the nature will have tangled bonds, tangled chains in a polymer. Now, electrons don't flow very well in such kind of a tangled geometry. So the idea is to open these chains, to open up the environment for the electrons or the ions to flow, so you can have some electronic conductivity. So basically, this is what we are doing. We're trying to look at the backbones of different polymers we have arranged and trying to somehow find ways of opening up these polymer chains by oxidation, hydrolysis, so on and so forth. And then trying to increase their crystallinity, open them up for electrons to flow. The other strategy is placing where your materials belong. If you can create transistor kind structures within the polymers, dielectric kind of structures within the polymers by inserting different materials which actually get fixated. It's like implantation in semiconductors, so on and so forth, you can actually control their geometry and their functionality. So you have to look at the very microstructural level, how you are going to create the device. So in this, you will have polymer chains, and in between you have graphene and biodegradable metals. We are also trying to create artificial percolation paths within materials. This is basically our approach towards semiconductors, and trying to have these percolation paths and control them so we can have tuned conductivity for our materials. And finally, we do a lot of surface chemistry, surface modification, functional addition, and subtraction, which will also modify the materials at the microstructural levels. And when you do changes at the microstructural levels, you will see their performance drastically different when you actually end up making devices using it. Something which is actually an insulator in the environment or in nature ends up being a semiconductor when you actually make those changes. So I'll give you a first snapshot now. Let me tell you that a lot of this work I've not shown, but mostly I'm concentrating on healthcare because I work directly with clinicians and healthcare professionals. So the idea here is to pick up a material which is biocompatible, that is skin friendly, human tissue friendly, which is biodegradable because we want to keep that. And of course, we can have some kind of tuning parameters. Now the performance parameters in certain cases are not very, very stringent in the sense that I don't have to create a 5-star material. If it works biologically and it's very compatible, then it works for me. So this is a very niche area that we have created for the kind of materials that we have developed in our lab. The first material that we started working was we picked up a biocompatible PVDF TRFE, a very, very well-known piezoelectric material. And just like any other work, we started with using nanofillers, putting them in between PVDF TRFE and trying to look. But we were not successful because the idea here was to actually measure the pressure on the internal organs of human body. And I'll give you a reason for that is basically the doctors say the first indication of a disease is actually increased pressure on a human organ. So if you can pick up that pressure, even before the disease, the onset of a disease, you can actually have a lot of information what is going to happen. But right now, there's no way that doctors can do that. So our task was to actually go down and have those minute pressure levels on internal organs to be picked up. And we started working with PVDF TRFE, but we were not happy. So we went back to the drawing board and we worked with graphene oxide. And then we had to make a biodegradable graphene oxide because we wanted to keep that functionality there. And then basically fused it with PVDF TRFE in such a way that it forms a kind of a dielectric device within the polymer chains of PVDF TRFE. The result of that was we had a very good performance of the dielectric material, the ferroelectric performance. So we got a very good remnant polarization. It's one of a fantastic paper that came out of it. But as Professor Satyanarayan in the morning said, it's not just about the papers and writing good reports. It's about taking it further to the clinical applications. But this is a very, very challenging task because doctors speak a completely different language to engineers. Okay, so what is good for us is good, not at all good for them. So this is where we faced a problem. Is basically when we showed them, oh, we got the piezoelectric performance that we were looking for. We can measure the pressure, but some of you who are familiar with piezoelectric materials would know that they require cooling. What is cooling? Basically, once you make the material, you put it in under a very high dielectric electric field to fix the dipole moments, right? Once they are fixed, they're good for life, right? Now, when you talk to the doctors, they will ask you hundreds of questions and you have to tell them step by step. The moment they hear you have to use high electric field, they say, no, I'm not going to use your material. But it took us almost a year to convince them, look, we are not putting your patients under electric field. It's already a material that we already converted it to a device, so nothing to worry. But they are not willing to do it. So this project was actually shut down by the doctors and said, no, we are not going to use. So we went back to the drawing board, said, okay, let's look at a material which is piezoelectric, can do the job that we want, that is the minute pressure levels, but it also does not require cooling. So thankfully, in nature, we have fantastic materials, and I'm not kidding, when you actually go back and look, you have fantastic materials which have very minute or weak performances. So the idea here is to enhance those performances. So poly-L-lactic acid is one of the biodegradable materials routinely used as a tissue engineering material, and it has a very weak piezoelectric performance. The idea was, can I enhance the piezoelectric performance to actually match the PVDF TRFE? So we did a whole project, and this was a very challenging project for my student because for almost 1.5 years, we were not getting any results. And then suddenly one day he was very frustrated. It's just a real story. He said, I'm going to throw this away, and he stretched the material. And something happened. When he stretched, we saw that the transparency of the material changed, and it changed the shape and form. And then we were like, okay, let's figure it out what's happening in this material. And that's what hit us, that it's as simple as stretching this material, which changes its piezoelectric properties. Simply stretching, what it does is, as I told you very early on, nature is a disorganized mesh. When you stretch it, you're actually stretching the polymer chains and making them more even. That allows the electrons to flow and the dielectrics, the dipole moment to be held on. And that gave us a very fantastic material that we can simply create for a piezoelectric sensor for human health applications. We also do a lot of work on dry electrodes. So I'm pretty sure if you have ever gone for a health checkup, a lot of you would have gone for EEG, ECG, right? The doctors will put some gel on you and put these electrodes all over your body. Now that's fine if you are doing the ECG or EEG for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes. But this gel, which is a salt solution, silver-based solution, it creates a huge skin reaction. So if someone has to be monitored for 24 hours or more, this is a big problem. So the solution for that is to not have this gel. Now you need to have this gel because you need conductivity between your electrode and your skin system. So we are working on a lot of, I'll show you some, where we have created a whole range of dry electrodes for different kind of EEG, ECG, ELG measurements. And the idea comes from a very tasty plate of muscles. I'm a meat eater. So we have this, once a month we all go out to have lunch. And we were having a plate of mussels, and my postdoc said, oh, mussels is the only species on earth which can stick to exactly any surface, organic, inorganic, wet, dry. And it has a very good adhesive, and the adhesive that it secretes resembles dopamine. Do you know what dopamine is? It's a happy hormone. When you feel happy, you release dopamine in your body. So basically, that gave us an idea, okay, can we use this naturally occurring hormone to actually create a new chemistry to have these dry electrodes? So this is exactly what we had done here. I don't know if the video, can you play the video?
Video.
Okay, never mind. So this is a video where you can have tunable addition. So if you want to create a smart packaging material for your printed electronic sensors and you want to stick it on a cardboard or a wood, you can have very hard adhesion. But if you want to have a very low adhesion for your skin, you can actually tune that adhesion. And we have created a whole range of these kind of dry electrodes in our lab. Biodegradable conducting polyvinyl alcohol. So this is a polyvinyl alcohol that I told you, and then we use muscle chemistry, dopamine chemistry to basically make it adhesive and tune the adhesiveness. Now, as a printed electronics engineer who works with printed technologies, one biggest problem that I face is that when you have multi-material, this is where the failure mechanisms happen. This is also where the loss of electronic properties happen. One material, two material, and the interface is always a problem. So as a dream, it will be really great for me for printed electronics to have the same material system as my substrate, same material system as my insulator, dielectric, or same material system as a conductor or a.
The question we ask ourselves is, we have this very insulating PV material which sticks well. Now, can I convert this into a conductor for some applications which I'll show you later? Because it's biocompatible, biodegradable, or some materials that they show today. So it will be great for healthcare applications. Now, people have done this work in some form by introducing ionic liquids, by doing ionic electricity, introducing ionic electricity. We don't want ionic electricity, we want electric.
So this was where we started our work on biodegradable metals. So we created a whole clean chemistry of biodegradable metals, which then are used with different kinds of polymers to create conducting pathways within these polymers to have a completely biodegradable construct for these kind of applications, right? And I'll show you where these applications are used. So you can see that we can completely print it. So everything is printable. Whatever I've shown, we can be converted into a functional ink, printed into different shapes and forms, so and so. about the word biodegradability, we take this word very, very seriously. We're not simply saying, okay, something that can be washed away in water or IPA, and that's biodegradable already. No, I have fantastic collaborators. We have bioreactors, so whatever material that we prepare, it goes into an inoculum, into a bioreactor. We do studies for months and months, 5 to 6, 7 months, to understand the degradation mechanisms, to understand how much methane, how much dioxide is being produced. So, and there are, by the way, ISO and ASTM standards already available, to which we match. So tomorrow, if these materials are to be picked up by the industry, we can actually give them basically a framework. Okay, this is the material, these are the signatures of those materials, so to speak. So what I want to tell you is, use methods which are scalable, use materials and techniques which are scalable, and also side by side create a framework that if your materials see the day of the light outside your lab, then they can be used using that frameworks and the standardization that are created for them. There are a lot more materials I won't go into, but feel free to come and talk to me because we have done a lot of work on silver-based for antibacterial properties, carbon-based material, and also we regularly pick up materials from tissue engineering. They are never used for electronics, okay? Nobody will ever touch them. But we are taking that they are already star tissue engineering materials. Can we do something to convert them into electronic materials for healthcare applications? Now, this is my favorite part. I am an engineer at the end of the day, so great to have these materials sitting in the lab, performing very well, but where to use them? And we always do reverse engineering. We go to the clinicians, ask them the problem, and then we start and come back to the drawing board to work with these materials. So some of the examples that I'll show you are real life cases. So this is the work which is being done in collaboration with Vistobia Hospital in Copenhagen. The idea here is anybody who ever gets admitted to ICU, the first 7 days are crucial because they lose a lot of their muscle mass. Okay, you are weak, you're immobile on the bed, and it can be as great as 50%. Now, it's fine if you are young, you can recover. But what about the feeble elderly patients? This is actually life-threatening for them. They don't have the muscle mass to start with, and if they lose 50% of that, they're actually completely bedridden, and they can never get that muscle mass back. That's a truth. So the way it is treated all over the world, not just Scandinavia, is that after they are discharged, they have to go to physiotherapists and they have to regenerate these muscles, which is basically by putting these big bulky electrodes and stimulating the muscle, because muscles have electrical activity. So your brain, heart, and muscles are the 3 places where you have any electrical activity. So, but once it's lost, it's very hard to get it. So the idea was with my collaborator, Charlotte, she said, Shweta, can we do something about it? That we start to do this treatment from day 1, from the first hour that the patients are admitted. So we came up with this idea. So in Scandinavia, at least, they have to all wear compressive stockings because the compressive stockings keeps your muscle intact, right? So we created this 3-electrode system that you can see here. It's made out of all the materials that I've discussed, some of the materials that we have discussed, completely biocompatible, still friendly, connected by wire with a small stimulator, which is also built housed. So what we are doing, we are using the same frequencies and stimulating the patients from the first hour of the get-go in the hospital bed itself. And the patients can do that themselves because in Scandinavian countries, healthcare professionals are in scarcity. We don't have nurses and doctors too many. So the number of doctors per bed is very low. So here patients, unless they are severely ill, can operate nurses. Now this has been a fantastic study for us because we have gone on.
Anyone who's been hospitalized knows how quickly strain fades. This decline is caused by muscle loss due to prolonged demobilization, resulting in a global healthcare challenge affecting millions of patients every year.
2021, and as I speak now, we are actually doing treatments on hip and knee implant patients.
At Nordic Biostim, we have developed a fully automated healthcare textile that transforms every moment of rest into an opportunity for recovery, preserving muscle strength and empowering patients to heal with dignity and hope from the very first day of hospitalization. When patients become immobilized, especially after surgery, muscle loss occurs rapidly. This leads to longer hospitalization stays, higher healthcare costs, and for many elderly patients, the loss of independence. Our invention is a fully automated healthcare textile that gently activates muscles through integrated soft and biocompatible electrodes, designed for continuous long-term use throughout a patient's hospitalization.
Now, the other problem that we picked up was with using cardiovascular surgery. So one of my collaborators, whenever there is a problem with heart, normally 50–60% times it's always with the heart wall, right? There's something wrong with the heart wall. Now, sometimes there's a gap, sometimes a flat move, whatever. Now, there are always very advanced ways of correcting that, plastic, ways. So not a problem. Now, one thing that is missing is that they actually, as doctors, would like to know what is the pressure on the heart wall that the heart is putting, because that is very crucial to understand the heart wall function. Now, there's no way to measure that heart wall pressure. So our challenge was to, so this is basically the ring, if you can see here, this is the wall that goes inside during the surgery. And they want to create a pressure, we wanted to create a pressure sensor, which is ring-like, which overlaps the entire aortic wall sensor and sense the pressure along where it's put. So here you can see on the right-hand side, this is basically a human heart, demo that we have created in-house built. And we can then measure and put different materials and measure the pressure that they will face once they do the same activity of the human heart. So in this, you can see my student is actually pressing it. This is the ring-shaped kind of a printed flexible sensor, which is being kept there for putting it. So you can apply different pressures and coordinate these pressures with the amount of stable and voltages that will be generated, which will give them an idea about the pressure that the heart wall is. So this kind of extra information will help the cardiovascular surgeons to actually devise better treatments for kind of correcting this kind of a heart wall type dysfunction that happens. We do a lot of work on wound monitoring and wound treatment as well. I'll show you some snapshots on the treatment, but wound management is one area which is screaming for innovation. What is the one way that you would look at a wound? It's always visual inspection, right? Now, it's okay if it's an acute wound, but if it's a chronic wounds can take up to 1 to 2 years for people with diabetes, people with high blood sugar, high blood pressure to heal. And that's a big problem. A lot of time and effort is wasted. So we have created mini sensors in our lab, which can then go with the bandages. So it's kind of a smart bandaging system, which can give you an indication of a change in the pH, the oxygen level, the temperature of the wound bed, because these are the 3–4 physical parameters, apart from all the biochemical changes happening in the wound that happen. So if you can pick them up and actually tell the trend, you don't have to be very precise, but if you can tell the trend, okay, the temperature of the wound bed is increasing this direction, same for the oxygen level, you can have a lot of information about the wound beds that the chronic patients are dealing with. And that's where we try to work a lot in these kind of on-skin bandage devices. But we also do a lot of work, and I think my initial vision is basically to replace your laptops with green counterparts or with green components, if not entirely. We do a lot of work on different kinds of electronic components. So this is an example of biodegradable transistor array. We are trying to bring them, we are trying to use as much green chemistry and as much green components in order to create the same kind of performance. Of course, the caveat here is, and a disclaimer as well, is these are not star-performing transistors. I'm not competing with the silicon technology, but that's not the aim. As I said initially, the aim is to complement it by trying to have a greener solution to the applications which might not require such high-performing parameters moving forward. So in this, you can see that this is a gated electrode. Basically, we have tried to use a biodegradable substrate, which is PDA, molybdenum sulfide-based material, which is basically a 2D material, but we have tried to tune and tweak it so that we can make it semi or partially biodegradable, polymer contacts, and dielectric used as we use. A lot of work I won't go in the interest of time, but as I said, we are developing a whole range of dry electrode systems. So for ECG, ENG, EEG, we are trying to have, we have a lot of materials in our lab, which can basically now measure all these wellness and biopotential monitoring, and we can print it. We have the recipes and the framework to print it on a wood, all the way from plastic to a textile to biopolymer. We have even printed on wet environments. So hydrogens, which are 90% water, we can directly print these things onto that wet environment. Now, this is where I was talking about form factors. Now, we are trying, when you look at healthcare devices, as age has gone up, the healthcare devices, more and more these bioelectronic devices are inside the body. And they are getting smaller and smaller thanks to the miniaturization. But the one big problem all of them face is the amount of wires we still need in them. There's no going away from wires. So imagine the chip has gone to a nail size, but you still need a big wire or a long wire. Where do you put these wires? Especially in the pacemakers, especially in the cola implants. So the idea here is, can we replace all these low shielding, low frequency wires by printed counterparts? And this is a separate project that I'm running with my students, taking and picking each wire that we use in the electronics industry, at least for the healthcare, and trying to print. So if you look at this, is a very basic prototype. This doesn't look like a wire, it's just a small patch of silver ink, shielded ink, right? But it works very well and fantastically, just like any shielded wire, right? So the idea is to change and rethink the impact factors and the form factors of the materials that you are actually using, and possible because of the printed technologies. As I said, wound healing, there is a consensus in healthcare industry that if you have some kind of a heat treatment as well as electric stimulation at the wound site, the wounds will heal faster. So you don't only need a chemical solution, which is your bandages. So we are creating our own gel-based materials, which we can 3D print, and it's 90% water. Okay, this is a very fluffy, because it has to go directly on the wound, so it has to be water. It has to be really fused with drugs. And then we print interdigitated circuits using special inks. So these inks don't require any post-processing, and they go and they can heat up the environment of the wound bed, provide electric stimulation, and then they can do their job. This is very, very basic early on proof of concept, so I don't have any clinical data here. But the idea is to heal the wounds from an alternate method, using temperature or using electric stimulation. We are also doing a lot of work on implantable electronics. As I said, we are trying to, of course, have rehabilitation. But when a knee or a hip implant, for example, happens for a patient, and once they are discharged, there's no way for the doctors to know what is happening inside the body. Can I put electronics with these implants, which will then communicate with the healthcare professionals and tell them if the implant is accepted, it's rejected, and what is the consequence? Because even after all the advanced healthcare technologies that we have, the success rate of an implant to be accepted by a human body is only 60%. There's a high 40% chance that the implant will be rejected by a body, and there's no way to know that. So we are trying to use, again, tissue engineering materials, again, build these materials for electronic printing, create special inks for these electrons. In this case, it's an antenna system, just a proof of concept that if it has gone inside the body, I can communicate. And within the human environment, this is called bioresolvable. It will take 3 to 4 months or up to 6 months that we can tune, and it will completely disappear. So once it's done the job, I don't want that electronics inside my body, and it's completely gone. Right? So that's the future of electronics for healthcare applications in the area of bioelectronics. So that's all from me. At least I've given you a snapshot of how you can design new materials, then actually find new ways of printing technologies that we have, and then actually reimagine the form factors of these and try to use them and create a use case base. So my advice to you is to find a problem and then go back to the drawing board to look for the solutions and kind of materials and systems that you need to solve that particular problem. But do it responsibly so that you are using greener, safer materials. Eventually, these materials have to degrade, have to die one day. So look at the end of cycle, not just the assessment, but what will actually happen to these devices. And that's what we have been trying to build for the last 10 years in our research lab. Just to end the talk, I sit on the editorial board of these two journals. One is IEEE Journal of Flexible Electronics. The other one is International Journal of AI for Materials and Design. So if you have, and we are running a special issue on AI for process and design. If you're using AI for your design of experiments or your process or your material design, do feel free to contact me and approach me for your submissions. Last but not the least, these are some of the conferences that we are organizing. So please, one of them I think is EPSCON and FLEPS, which is being in Georgia, Atlanta this year. So feel free to approach and submit your papers. These are fantastic platforms for you to showcase your technologies to the world outside India and within India. And I'm looking if you have any collaborations or you're interested in any of these topics, AI for materials discovery, flexible sensors, new materials, semiconductors, and robotics, just reach out to me. So that's all from me. I just want to revisit the same echo that I started my talk with. Everything and everywhere we use electronics. If that electronics itself is not safe, it's not green, is your innovation really responsible? And are you leaving a planet which is healthier and cleaner for the future generations? Thank you.
Can I have one question?
Sure.
Yeah. Can we use various experiments too? Varicose veins. Many of the features are something with varicose veins.
Can you use for any something of the topic? So that's a good question. We can try it. I mean, we have the stocking, so because it's stimulation. I don't know because so right now what we are doing is because our bags are very broad because we are targeting certain muscles on our thighs and the arms.
Yeah,
But for varicose veins, I think it has
one or two minutes, otherwise they can during
Since they are having varicose veins in veins.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. It has to be that the vein
Bulging.
yeah. That could be one way. We can definitely talk in the future. Yeah.
Then treatable. Fantastic work, Shraddha. So I have questions like you have found some materials like biodegradable. So have you tested the in vitro toxicity of these materials or in vivo toxicity in animal model?
Some of them, yes, but not all of them. Yeah, some of them are just, so for example, the ones that are used in stockings, the one used for wound. That's, sorry, yeah, for the ones that are used in stockings and the ones which are used in the wounds, that they have been verified, but not all of them. Because that, as I told you, in Europe, it's a, mammoth task to get the regulatory authorities to sign and everything, so we try to only do once we know that there's a real case and we're going to conditions.
Same question for the heart wall which we showed. Right, and tested that with the red model.
So we are doing it right now. My student who's in Denmark is currently doing that. So we plan to do on that one because we want to use it for surgery and at least have a real case for it. But I don't have the results there.
Because graft rejection and toxicity in other organs is very important.
Yeah, so if you look at most of my solutions, that is one reason because we don't want to go to class 1 devices because more, you will have more regulatory certifications coming in. So most of my solutions are more on skin or over the skin because then you kind of bypass that system and it's safe. I mean, you can wear and throw it up if you have a reaction. Anything to that goes inside the body, implantable, then, these things have to be done in a very stringent way before we can even go to, to do something. Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Ma'am, other than the efficiency, what are the trade-offs for the biocompatible materials?
Yeah, I think performance is one big trade-off. I don't think so. It will take some time to reach the level where you can actually use it commercial devices, for example. These are not tough. You can see a lot of them are soft, flexible devices. So mechanical strength is one thing where we really have to struggle unless we go to making it a hydrogel, which is very tough. Otherwise, they don't. So they're only good enough for tissue engineering kind of, applications. So efficiency, mechanical strength, these are the trade-offs that we'll have to make.
Also, ma'am, you said these are biodegradable. So can they be used on different patients or for each patient is a different thing?
No. Most of them are common. So there's a common ground that you can use. That for one patient, it's the same. I mean, biocompatibility is same. Skin reaction is the same. So it doesn't vary with person to person. Of course, there might be some demographic, changes that might happen, but I mean, so far, I don't think so. These stockings, for example, they can be used for any patient in Asia versus Europe. The only problem that you will see is Scandinavia is a cold country, so it's okay to wear these stockings 24/7. In Asia, with a hot environment, it will be difficult for them. So you might have to change the texture of the stocking itself. But other than that, I don't think so.
Now, so how feasible do you think is the implementation of a digital twin on any implant or the pacemaker which we use in the heart, or to observe the pressure of the internal organ?
100%, it's already being done. I mean, people are already doing it. Digital tool for human health is a very, very commercialized model available. You can actually buy them. And doctors, at least in Scandinavia, they're actually using it to practice before their surgeries. So it's completely possible.
So is this used as an internal component or is this that as an observation outside?
Which one? These solutions you're talking about?
If we implement a digital twin.
No, they are mostly used. I mean, what I know from my collaborators is they are using it as for testing and trials before their actual surgery happens. Of course, there is a growing, robotic surgery is one thing. So they are actually training the robots on these digital twins as well, because these robots are then assisting them in the operation theaters. So that's another twist to it. But so far, I mean, it's for trials basically they're using.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Agrawal, for that fascinating presentation. I'm sure many of us are inspired about the possibilities which you have shared. And ma'am will be available in the lunch break in case if you have more queries and if you would like to interact with ma'am, you can do it. So let's move on to our second technical talk of the day. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Sonu Gandhi from the National Institute of Animal Biotechnology. Dr. Gandhi, a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry and the Telangana Academy of Sciences, specializes in biosensor development and diagnostic applications. She is the recipient of the Alexander von Humboldt Connect Fellowship and the Sir Women Excellence Award with over 100 peer-reviewed publications and multiple patents. Today, Dr. Gandhi will be speaking about screen-printed electrodes for smart sensing. I invite Dr. Sonu Gandhi to present her work in front of the participants. Okay.
Yeah, so good morning again. So I will be speaking mainly on the screen printed electrodes for smart sensing, and later I will be giving some glimpse of other electrodes which can be utilized for the sensor applications.
This one.
It's not moving.
I will slide it because it's not downloaded now. I'll change it.
Before this,
It's going on live now. Streaming in YouTube.
Introduce a bit about our group, what we work on.
And
There are several groups in the lab that works on the tissue development of electrochemical sensors, enzyme-based sensors, coloring sensors, or
It can't go.
and also the mobile sensors for the detection of pesticides, antibiotics, or the bacterial pathogens or viral pathogens. And
Just a minute.
today, majorly, I will be discussing on pesticide detection, which is a monochrome here. And
Just a minute.
Just
a minute.
Actually, you have to download it and copy and paste. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay.
Okay, so as we know that monocrotophos is a highly hazardous insecticide and it's a potent neurotoxic because of the ECHE inhibitor, which affects the brain basically and also the reproductive failure it causes. And WHO classified it as class 1B pesticide and it has the acceptable daily intake of 360 micrograms per day or the MRL of 0.0221 mg per week. It is sprayed basically by the farmers on the variety of crops and also lead to the percolation inside the plants or the water or even the animal or human health as well. So it's a systemic pesticide and the traces of this monocrotophos has been reported in various fruits, vegetables and milk, meat, water, eggs, anywhere you see the soil as well. So, consumption of these products is very, very hazardous to human health as well and the animal health. It's not moving.
It's not moving. Just press here. The center is here.
This side? Not moving. Okay. So, there are several toxicity reports which has been reported until now, which says that it is affecting the health of farmers and also there are reports that there was a children death as well in the past and around more than 6,000 farmers died due to the pesticide poisoning. The detection methods for these pesticides are based on the HPLC, GC or MS, which is conventional method and it is very costly and required a trained person to operate. And here we propose the biosensing platforms which can be quick, cost-effective, less time-consuming, and does not require a trained person. What are the components of the biosensors? So the biosensor consists of the transducers basically, so it can be tweaked as per our requirements from the electrochemical, optical or piezoelectric sensors. And here it needs to be introduced with the biological components which could be your enzymes, antibodies and aptamers. Further, this transducer is connected to the signal processing unit, which could be the electrochemical sensors or spectrophotometers or fluorescence-based methods or the smartphone-based methods. So today I will be talking about the aptamer, antibody or enzyme-based sensors, which we have utilized for the monocrotophos detection. So coming to this SELEX process, because this is done by one of my students, Sagar. So what he was doing, he was selecting the potential aptamers for specific recognition of these monocrotophos pesticides. So he was using the graphene oxide or the graphene nanoplatelets as a nanomaterial and was doing the partitioning steps. So because it is very important in SELEX that to choose the higher affinity aptamers which can be utilized as a biorecognition elements. So he was using simply the Eppendorf and mixing the targets with the material and doing the centrifuge. So you can see that the material was still coming in the supernatant. So for this to overcome, he has made the partition cartridge column. So everyone is using the spin columns or the plasmid isolation columns in the molecular biology lab. And after use, we usually throw it. So it is based on the best out of waste approach. So he was utilizing the used column and then cleaned it and packed it with the graphene nanoplatelets or the graphene oxide separately and compared everything, all the efficiency parameters, whether they use GRNP or the GO in this process, which is more efficient. So in this study, we observed that GRNP was working better than the GO. So what he was doing, he was using the target SSDNA library, the monocrotophos target and incubating it for some time, loading into this column, and after centrifugation, like you do the plasmid isolation centrifuge just for a minute, then it is coming in the flow through, and this flow through is enriched with your target bound SSDNA, and which you run the gel after PCR, and we were getting very crisp band. So by this process, he reduced the SELEX steps from 35 to 15 or 16 rounds. So which is how he has reduced the time as well as the cost and the yield also during the experiment.
So with this process, what he has done, he has used the Go as a material and GRNP as a material, which is graphene nanoplatelets, and carried out the SEM analysis of the same. So this is the bare material of the graphene oxide and GRNP, and this is after absorption with the ssDNA, where you can see some kind of deposition or the morphological changes in the SEM. Further EDEX analysis also was carried out, which showed the similar kind of pattern, but the oxygen was absent. However, in the presence of ssDNA, we observed the peaks of elemental peaks of nitrogen and phosphorus. Further XPS was also done with both the materials after ssDNA, before ssDNA as well. To see the binding energies, and zeta potential also gives us an impression that the ssDNA is efficiently absorbed onto the material surface. Then he carried out the SELEX rounds. So here you can see it has been reduced tremendously to 15 or 17 rounds. In case of Go SELEX, it was 17 rounds, and in case of GRNP SELEX, it was 15 rounds. After, between these rounds, you need to do the negative selection to select the or enrich or give the pressure to the aptamers that you get the specific aptamers. Later, he has done the agarose gel electrophoresis to see that each cycle is giving us the consistent amount of the DNA. After that, so the TA cloning was done, and 8 unique sequences was observed in case of Go SELEX, and in case of GRNP, we observed around 10 to 11 sequences. So with this sequence, next.
It's not moving.
Okay. So the next is aggregation assay. So how to know that which aptamer is specific and which we have to use for the sensing platforms. So we have synthesized the gold nanoparticles to perform the aggregation assay, which tells us that which aptamer is binding with the target and leaching out from the nanoparticle surface. So with this is the hydrodynamic diameter of the gold nanoparticles and the zeta potential and time analysis, which tells us that particles are monodispersed. And after aggregation, you can see the time image clearly showed that the particles are aggregated. Later, the salt concentration was optimized at 50 millimolar, and aptamer concentration was optimized at 200 nanomolars. With this, all the aptamers were studied in case of Go and GRNP SELEX, where we observed that NPGO130 and NPGR999 gave us very promising results, and further analysis was carried out to understand its binding affinity. Because it's very important to understand that aptamers are binding with high affinity with the target or not. So in case of NPGO130, the KD value was around 31 micromolars, and in case of NPGR, it was 19.92 micromolars. Later, the cross-reactivity analysis was also carried out with the panel of pesticides, and specifically with the monochlorophos, where we have observed that the aptamer is specifically binding with the monochlorophos in both the cases, and CD analysis also gave us a clue that in case of NPGO130, it is a G quadruplex formation. However, in the case of NPGR, it is random coil. In silico docking analysis also gave us the clue that where the aptamers are binding with the target exactly. With this, we were sure that aptamers are binding with high affinity with the target. So let's go for the sensor fabrication. So here we have utilized the STC electrodes. So you can see this is the SAM morphology of the bare electrodes, and this is the magnified image. And after aptamer coating, you can see there is a change in the morphology, and EDEX analysis also confirmed the presence of the aptamers, which was not in case of bare STC. Later, the contact angle was also analyzed. In this case, it shows that aptamers are bound, and there is a change in the hydrophilic nature of the electrode, which says that the aptamers are bound efficiently onto the electrode surface. So this is the scheme which tells us that how we have done the fabrication of these two electrodes with the two different aptamers. Basically, so you can see in case of bare SCCE, there is the decrease in the current observed when the aptamer was coated onto the electrode surface, and when there is a monochrotophos, there is the increase in the current was observed. So we were expecting to get such kind of results in the electrochemical performance. So all the parameters were optimized for efficient functioning of the electrodes, like scan rate, pH, and then both the aptamers MPGO130 and MPGR999 were also tested for different aptamer concentration, and testing with the monochrotophos was also carried out at different concentration. With this, the LOB was observed in case of MPGO130 is 0.58 nanograms per ml, and in case of MPGR, it was 0.78 nanograms per ml. Later, we have also tested it with the samples, basically tomato extract, lake water, soil samples, or animal feed, meat samples. So you can see that the aptamers were binding with the monochrotophos, but we could not see very significant change in the current in this case. So we have done some modifications further for testing. However, these electrodes were stable up to 28 days, and all the sensors were validated by the HPLC in both aptamer cases, where the percent RSC change was in correlation with the electrochemical sensor and the HPLC. This is again a new concept on the best out of waste approach. Like in our offices, where basically we use the toner cartridge, and after it gets over, we just throw it away from our office. So what Sagar has done, he has taken out the waste cartridge and taking out the material out of it, and just did the EDAX to understand the elemental composition, and he found that iron is present in there. So he thought to utilize it for the Selex because it has the carbon in it. So then what he has done, he has oxidized the carbon black because it was not soluble. So he oxidized carbon black to the OCD, which is like oxidized carbon black. So there are a couple of steps, only 3 steps, very quick steps for the Selex. So what he has done in this case, ssDNA library was incubated with the target pesticide. Later, it was mixed, and the magnet, then we have added the material, which is OCB here, mixed it, and then the magnet was bring close to the wire. So it will just pull all the non-specific material, and we will have the enriched pool, which will be utilizing for the Selex process. So this is the kind of CB looks like in the aqueous solvent, while you see this OCB in the oxidized carbon black is completely soluble. So this is the short video which he made. You can see it is not soluble. And after making the OCB product, it's completely soluble, and when you bring magnet close to it, all material is coming very fast. So we get the enriched fluid. So with this, he has characterized the material to understand its morphology and other elemental compositions, and you can see that CV looks like a granular morphology. This is the magnified images of the same. However, OCB looks like a particulate kind of a morphology after oxidation. The elemental composition of EDAX and CV and OCB shows the presence of iron, and there is the increase in the oxygen content in case of EDAX. TEM analysis also showed kind of a diffused particulate morphology and the granular morphology in CB and OCB, which is corroborating with the SAD spectrum with the 0.24 nanometers of de-spacing. XRD analysis further confirmed that the material is amorphous and partially crystalline. However, XPS elemental analysis showed the increase in the percentage of oxygen in this case, and FTIR gave us the glimpse that there is the introduction of the OH stretching and the CO stretching vibration. VSM shows that there is the material is showing the paramagnetic behavior. So then we would like to know that how much OCB is required basically for the select process, because we cannot really do the experiments without some calculations. So with that, we have utilized different amount of OCB and also done the UV like absorbance, fluorescence and gel based analysis. So in this case, we observed that 10 milligrams of OCB was sufficient for the complete absorption of the material, the aptamers. Then 16 rounds of selects was performed in this case together with the negative selection after round 10. And this is the gel and cloning, and after that we found 13 unit sequences in this case, and aggregation analysis gave us the clue that MPCB333 aptamer was very promising out of all sequences, and this is the UV spectra of the same aptamer. The KD value was around 61 micromolar. Again, it was not so good. And CT spectra showed that it is forming G quadruplets and also the docking. The cross-reactivity analysis was also done with several pesticides, and it was specific in this case with monocrotophos. So to enrich its affinity, what we have done some truncation in the aptamer sequences and made several truncated sequences from A to I, where we found that aptamer MPCB333T was giving us good results basically. So this is the UV spectra of the same at different concentration of monocrotophos. So this is the KD value which gave us very good results. So it has dropped from 61 to 27 micromolars. Later we further thought that can we further tweak this aptamer. So we did the point mutation in this aptamer from D1 to D5, but could not get any success. So what we would like to understand that whether this is that aptamer is really specific for the monocrotophos. So what we have done the DNA displacement assay. In this case, we have used the BHQ1 as a quencher and the fan labeled aptamer, because if the aptamer binds to the monocrotophos, specifically you will get the fluorescence. And also the KD value, in this case you can see we have utilized different concentration of monocrotophos together with several controls. In both the cases, triple-3, you can see the KD was 8.46 micromolars, and triple-3D, it was 3.94 micromolar. So we were quite satisfied with these results. And we have done the analytical testing at various concentrations, where triple-3 MPCB333 aptamer gave us the LOD of 0.72 nanograms and the truncated one at 0.61 nanograms. And further, we have done the cross-reactivity together, so only with the monocrotophos, and also the mixture of all the pesticides, because when the farmers spray pesticides in the fields, there are several pesticides that they mix. So it is important to know that this aptamer is really detecting the monocrotophos out of all the population of pesticide. So I think due to this block, you can't see that part. So it shows with clarity that it is detecting the pesticide. Can you move it a little bit that side? Yeah, so you can see this is the mixture of all the pesticides. So this aptamer was very good. And other real samples were also tested. So here you can see there is a huge difference in the RFU value as compared to the control. So we were quite sure that this aptamer which we have selected for the studies is good enough. Yeah, so the validation again was done by the HPLC for this fluorescence biosensor, which is in correlation with the percent RSV. Now this is the electrochemical sensor for the enzyme based sensing. So what he has done, He has used WS2 nanosheets and the gold nanowires in this case and made the immobilization of the ACH enzyme and tested the presence of monoprotophos. So, coming to the characterization, he has done various combinations. So, this is the only AULW gold nanowires, and this is the WS2 nanosheets, which is conductive in nature, and that's the EDAX, which shows the characteristic elemental peaks. So, what he has done, he has mixed the two components as a nano hybrid. So different molar ratios were prepared to understand which molar ratio is working best for the sensor application. And the same EDAX analysis shows the elemental composition where you cannot really say much difference in the elements because elements will be same. Then the Raman spectra was carried out to understand that the WS2 nanosheets are maintaining its structural integrity because it's conductive in nature. So you can see this is only WS2, and when we are increasing the molar ratio, you can see at nanocomposite P, there is an increase in the Raman intensity at specific peaks, which says that the material is containing its structural integrity and can be used further for sensing applications. And this is the electrochemical spectra like CTDPV, SWV, and LSV of different nanocomposite together with the control, which suggests that nanocomposite D is better in all the parameters. And optimization studies were again carried out in this case, as mentioned previously, that's the EIS spectra. And the morphological analysis by HR suggests that this is the nanovirus structure at different magnifications. And here you can see it's at 0.23 nanometers of the spacing working 111 plane, which is corroborating with the SAD spectra and the FFT spectra in the cubic structure. And WS2 nanosheets showed us the pattern at 100 plane with the free spacing of 0.27, and which is for the SAD spectra with the hexagonal structures. The combination of these two materials at the hybrid zone showed the nanowire zone together with the WS2 zone. So in this case, we could see both the planes in the SAD and FFT, which suggests the successful synthesis of the material. XRD analysis again was corroborating with the SAD spectra or the HRM analysis, which suggests that the material is crystalline and amorphous in nature. HRXPS analysis was also in correlation with the TEM analysis. AFM microscopy gave us the morphological analysis as well as the height profile, which says that it shows the correct height at 27 nanometers to 28, and WS2 nanosheets were also lying in the same range, while the nanocomposite D was in between, which suggests the successful synthesis of the nanocomposite. And here we started then the sensing with the SPC electrode. So that's the salmon analysis of the bare electrode. And this is after the immobilization of the enzyme. And later, the nanocomposite, this is the bare SPC, this is the nanocomposite D. So you can see the nanowires and the sheet kind of structures here. And this E panel showed the nanocomposite D with the enzyme, with CHE enzyme. And EDEX spectra was the highly correlating with the SAM morphology. And again, the contact angle analysis also was corroborating with the SAM and EDEX analysis with decrease in the contact angle. Further optimization studies were carried out to enhance the performance of the electrode, and all the analysis at different concentration gave us the LOD of 48 femtograms per ml in this case. And the electrodes were again stable in this case up to 28 days, and it was validated again by the HPLC and was in close correlation. Moving to the antibody-based sensors for the monoprotocols, we have utilized the FDO electrode, and here we have utilized the antibodies And since we know that the monoprotopause is a small molecule and it's a hapten and it's non-immunogenic, so we need to do some functionalization studies for that. So it was functionalized and tested by the PLC and FEIL spectra. Then it was linked with the carrier protein to make it immunogenic. Further, further analysis was carried out by PLC and FDIR to validate the synthesis. Then different molar ratios of this conjugate with the monoprotophos was prepared, where we observed that 1:100 was quite good enough, and also we could see the redshift in case of UV spectra and the decrease in the fluorescence intensity, which suggests that the successful synthesis of the conjugate. So we immunized the animal model and raised antibodies and purified it with the characteristics having chain and the light chain. And this is the binding ELISA which showed that antibodies were specific. So we have the biorecognition molecules with us. So we have done the fabrication using the GO in this case and immobilized the antibodies. This is the SAM of the same, and zeta potential gave us the tremendous decrease in the charge from -63 to -3, and that's the XPS and EDEX analysis, which again confirmed the binding of the antibody. And the electrodes were again optimized for its efficient performance. Different concentration in this case with the antibodies gave us 0.49 ppm. And the cross-reactivity was also tested in the buffer samples for water and vegetable extract. The sensor was stable up to 21 days in this case. This is again on the approach of best out of waste. So here what we have done, we usually use the PVC sheets in the lab. So we throw it, and this is again your plasmid isolation column. So he has taken out the O-ring out of that and used these PVC sheets which are not used once, and then stick these O-rings on its surface, and he made a kind of alcohol and poured this alcohol substrate in it. So we have utilized 3 different substrates in this case to understand which substrate is giving us good results for field analysis. Then we made this kind of a light box which gave us the continuous light. So because we know that when you take the images, if you take at this area, the intensity will be different, but if you take at that area, the intensity will be different. So to provide the continuous light and to avoid the variation in the results, we made this light box and captured the images through the smartphone color grab app. And this is the kind of a color which we get through the indoxyl acetate, DTNBSA, and the alpha-amino acid. So you can see that when there is no monoprotophos, the color will be very dark, and if higher the concentration, lesser will be the color. So this is how we made this chromograph kind of assay for the enzyme-based sensing. So these are the results in this case after plotting the data at different concentration and also with the color graph. So here the LOD was in 1.3 nanometers, and with the color, with the spectrophotometer, you see with the different equipments, you will get a different kind of LOD. So if you use the spectrophotometer, it is 1.3 nanograms. If you use the app, it's 0.56 nanograms. And if you use the colorimetric app, it's 0.49 nanograms. And this is the kind of a DTNBSA with the real samples. So we have tested many samples like from water, lake water, pond water, soil samples, milk, fruits, vegetables, whatnot, with 2 assays. So it was quite good study. Then this is the HPLC of the same. And then we compared all the sensors which were developed for the monoprotophos in the lab. So we observed that out of all this, I think enzyme-based sensors, which I showed you, was giving us the better results. So this is how I conclude my work, and I thank all the funding agencies and IEEE Sensor Council for the invitation. I'm open for questions. So that's the Sagar. He has done all the work.
Okay, ma'am, last time, yes, Mike. We are finding most of the chemicals, whatever pesticides, whatever they are using for the fields are harmful. Why can't we stop at the production level? Instead of moving them to the fields and afterwards they are.
Yeah, there are regulatory guidelines, but you know, there is the black market always. There is a leaky pipelines through which it reaches to the farmers, and they themselves are not stopping. However, this pesticide is banned, but still we can test it and we can find that monoprotocols is still present.
You will have to take this as
Regulatory guidelines should be followed by us basically. Yes.
So I was wondering that you have isolated these biosensors in but when you actually use them in the plants, there is also a lot of moisture and there's also a lot of in the environmental conditions. Things are going to be different. So you tested them for the real life conditions or it's just prototyping?
So this is at the prototype stage, and other sensor for the another pathogen like Japanese encephalitis virus, which we work on. So for that we have tested at accelerated stability. So it is quite stable up to 1 year at 45 degrees.
So the humidity or
yes,
it's not going to play any part.
Yeah,
It's all stable.
Yes. So when we make the device, we make sure that accurate humidity, temperature and all this, not at 4 degrees or 24 at the laboratory temperature. We do not do like that because ultimate aim is to make the POC which can be field applicable. So we have like a small lab where we have all this kind of facility. We first create that temperature, then we fabricate the device.
So the deployment of this sensor will be at the plant level or would be at the user level?
Will be at the user level.
Yeah.
I would like to invite Professor Padma Sai to felicitate Dr. Sonu ma'am.
So I'm pleased to introduce the third speaker for today, Dr. Kaveri Jain. She is the member of the technical staff lead in technology development at Micron Technology. She leads the photolithography process innovation for the next generation engineering materials in Micron Technology. With a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Iowa and over 35 US experience, she specializes in polymers, photolithography, and semiconductor design. Her talk today is titled Fabrication Processes for the Sensor Devices Structures. So this will give us critical insights into how sensor concepts are translated into manufacturable products at the industrial scale. I invite Dr. Kaveji to take over. You're streaming now, so this arrangement we are going to. Yeah. We'll start with the slide up.
Yeah, just a minute. Okay.
Next one.
Just a minute.
Next.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm happy to be here. First of all, big thanks to IEEE Council, Census Council, the press program Professor Punalagu and Professor Goel and all the esteemed members for present here. Really delighted to be part of this event today. Thank you. All right, I'm going to change a little bit of course from the bio side to actually materialistic side of semiconductors today. We are going to discuss more about the application side of translating these designs into the chips that we see. It involves, most of my talk is going to be focused on the fabrication portion of it, a bit of it.
Here is a sensor. You have to know me.
Oh, it's too far from it. Then we are going to talk about resolution. You'll hear about shrinking down the features, packing more and more transistors into smaller space. And finally, I'm going to give you an example of one of these structures or devices that we built. So, sensors basically are devices or structures that translate a physical or an external form, which can be pressure, temperature, light, into an electrical signal that can be quantified. And that's what I'm going to focus more on the electrical part of it. All right. Now, types of semiconductors, they can be broadly divided into three categories. The processing units, right, the love part of it. Memory, where my company works with, where we work with VRAM, the volatile memory, and flash drives, with the non-volatile memory. And then there are special features, sensors. I do want to show you a picture. It doesn't do the justice. Here is a high volume manufacturing fab. And if I were to give you an example, it's really like a city in its own right. There are designers for making this really cool flows for next generation memories. Then there are chemical engineers for making it happen for processes. There are mechanical engineers who are testing, say, the stress of the various films. There are the environmental and industrial engineers who are looking at sustainability and bioprocessability of the structures that are being made, because of course, right, we have to be, the times are changing and we are on a clock to fix things. So the buzz that goes on in a fab, that really needs to be experienced, that vibe, that energy that's present, everybody doing their job, the common goal of creating this next generation node. So everybody, all groups have to come together to make that feasible. And if you were to visit a fab, there are like lines and lines of these tools just lined up across the way. And it's a sight to take in. Now, if I were to compare building a chip, it's very much like building, a bit how you're constructing that. First, you create your foundation with solid. You create a floor plan, right? One floor over the other. Ensure that the bottom floor perfectly aligns with your top floor. Then you have to create access. That's how you reach the top floor, right? Very much like that. And how do you manage the whole platform all through areas? It's very nicely utilized. You're not wasting any real estate. Chips are exactly that way, only that smaller. Data processing, if I were to broadly categorize them, they can be divided into 5 areas. First one is deposition. Now there are various paper deposition steps, CVD, PVD, and diffusion. The second area is the removal of the unwanted portions of your design. Then comes photolithography that sets the floor plan of where you want your circuitry, what design you want to put it forward. Then comes implant. How do you change the electronic properties of certain feature, right? The source and drain that you're very familiar with, I'm sure. And then this sort of measurement and effectiveness checks happening after almost every step. Right? How many defects are there? Are we in the correct dimension that we would like our design to be? So, very small process. These 10 areas, if you want to look at one design, It goes on for like thousands of times to create one small chip. Okay, I'm just going to give you a perspective of how this the size of the die and what we did. We just components and just zoom in certain parts of it. So this is an example, and you may be familiar that typically wafers are like 12-inch silicon wafers, so about a foot, right? You want to use every single portion of that your wafer. So typically each single wafer packs about 1,000 plus dies. So that's the range we're talking about. The boundary, the solid boundary is called a field. So at any time, a single field is printed. And those little rectangles you see inside, each of them is a die. So it's a repeated field going across the wafer. If you zoom it into one rectangle, it's one die. Now, looking at a single portion of that die, it's called a memory bank. As I continue, if you zoom into this memory bank, you see a single unit of memory array and periphery. Memory array is where you store all the bits, like 1, 0. That's your location of storing. And the boundary around it is called periphery, where all the read and write operations are operating from there. Now, from a schematic of a designer perspective, you see the structure below, where we have identified an active area and say an oxide structure is going over it. From us, from the process people, it translates into the last picture there. That if you notice, the pink area, for example, it's active area, it's the envelope legal regions that are embedded in the silicon. And this is about structures, metal encapsulated oxide that forms, say, your CMOS transistors, right? So that's different in perspective. I have this on the electrical side of things. I can talk to you about the 3D of it. To get you an understanding of the perspective, here is your head, or 60 micron, and this is the kind of circuitry we are talking about in these structures. Again, going a little bit deeper. The first picture on the left, upper left, is your schematics, or the circuitry where the designer said, hey, for your next node, I want this much performance for this much there. This is where you get. This is how you're going to place your diodes and transistors. That gets translated into a design, the schematic that I showed. And the picture lower left is like a top-down image. So you see various components, various films. Each of that film is printed separately. Okay? So you create the floor plan, say there is a picture of your 2D portion of this 2D wiring. Then at the bottom you see yours. You need to connect those wires that you have printed through different places. And each of them gets a different photo step. So the picture you see is that of the left hand, or that in the next few slides a bit more. And putting all of these together, you go through the photography step, you come with your final design. This is the translation, the process flow that happens. Talking about photography. So, like I mentioned, it's really creating a floor plan. And it's the process, the method is very similar to how you take a picture, how you develop your picture, right? So first, you figure out what exactly, what type of design you want on the chair. Create that variable that I talked about, and deposit this photoresist film, which is a sacrificial polymer. Standard polymers. You deposit that, it's a sacrificial film. All it's going to do is it's going to capture the photons, the light that you're going to expose your profile and create that design. Then you develop it. Now, third step, first 1, 2, 3, those are done in the photolithography process and in the area. Fourth one is where you etch it. And if you notice between 3 and 4, the photoresist height has decreased. Its purpose is to mask what you are trying to create. And once you are done with, you do that work. And your design is going to look like what your reticle was designed for. Now, the reticles. The way that we visualize reticles, they are like stencils actually, right? With certain open areas where you create a design with certain features, everything else remains the same. So, the way reticles are created, the design of it is 4 times the size of what you are going to print on paper actually. The whole scanner method, the scanner tools that we use, they take care of shrinkage by a quarter for each of the designing. And if you go through it, so each reticle will have a certain field in the, if you remember, I mentioned a collection of tags that are placed in each field so that they cover maximum area, and you go step by step to scan it on your literature. So that's our reticle to photo process. Okay, now what was photo? First, I already mentioned that you're going to etch the curve that's underneath in a particular design. The second part is that it can be used to change the electronic product. So the region that's exposed, that's left arm, can be used to implant certain ions, boron, phosphorus, or arsenic, and create a certain P-well or N-well of your transistor regions. There are various parameters if you draw a cartoon, then to actually make it functional. I'm going to list a couple of them. First one here is the focus. So you have to focus correctly. And I'm talking about like a nanometer scale changes here, 10 nanometers only. A little bit of offset of the focus from the lens to the top of the photoresist substrate is enough to change the profile. And essentially, you change the capacity of the photoresist to function what it's intended to do by changing that. So all of these parameters have to be very careful and other factor here is post-exposure beam. Right? You're going to expose in a certain region. Now think about when you're flashing a light, right? There's a diffraction happening, there's a chemistry change happening, yet it is so finely tuned. And I know Dr. Gandhi, she mentioned about quenchers. That's what these photochemicals actually have, so that the deprotected acid that gets generated in a photoresist film on exposure gets directly tuned to the desired feature. However, with the slight peak changes, you can adjust the profile, you can adjust the roughness of the features. It has to look like a rectangular feature actually at the end of the day. So very, very finely tuned chemicals. And of course, we have to ensure that the measurements are done correctly and who are designed. First of all, the resist thickness has to be such that, say, during edge, it has to be thick enough that it does not affect the profile underneath. It stands through all the edge process or implant process and does not get degraded too fast. Then there are critical dimensions, the CD features. And you get the height feature for your transistor that you started with. Finally, of course, there's defectivity also. Being particles behind during this process. At the end of the day, yes, it's easy to define circuit on your computer. Like this activity has to land so well with polysilicon here. But actually fabricating, you have to ensure that how do you make that bottom layer perfectly lined up to make that circuit actually function. Slight shift and the angstrom scale we are talking about can totally alter the amount of current you are transmitting through a device. Let's talk about dry etch here. So dry etch is one of the areas that is used to remove unwanted material from your process. It's basically a plasma. So those ions that are created in the chamber, they are directed in a given direction based on the electric field that's at the bottom of the wafer compared to where the plasma starts. And that energy itself is enough to wipe out a certain area. And depending on the type of chemical that you're using in this dry etch area, that determines what material you are going to use. So it's not a standard process. If you want to remove, say, a nitride film, it will be different components, dry film, dry edge gases, and if it's a nitride, something else. There are other radius also. There is wet strip, and it's, as you can imagine, it's isotropic. It goes everywhere. Means that you have to use it for things that are not specific to a particular layer, but you are trying to keep the whole, pilarize the whole paper. Dry edge, however, can be anisotropic. That is, that it can be very, very traditional and etch the certain regions that you design. And the photoresist, like I mentioned, has to stand, it will get degraded, but shouldn't get fully removed when we're etching to a picture line at the bottom. So here is an example of a dry edge to sulfate, where it has gone through carbon hard mass, the nitride, oxide, and a little bit into the silicon as designed. And here is a 3D view of implanting using photoresist. As you can see, certain areas are masked completely, whereas the area where you want to change the reticle property, it's open. Iron implantation, like I said, that depending on the type of element you use, for example, boron, small element, it can go very, very deep in your silicon film, whereas phosphorus, which is a larger element, will tend to stay at the top and depends how much it penetrates. It does disrupt the film a little bit, then you anneal it. As you can see, if you count the number of electrons around, say, arsenic, right? The number of electrons has increased, whereas around boron, the number of electrons has dropped by 1. This is how you have created an axis of electrons or created a hole of your substrate. Chemical wave deposition. Now, all of these features, and we are talking about, say, aspect ratio of 1000 to 1. Okay? The really, really deep structures, tiny structures. Imagine if you're trying to fit it with a spin on film, say, something water-like. You can imagine, first of all, that somehow not actually going inside these features to clean up. Or it may have this, like a surface tension effect taking place. That's where the deposition comes into play, where it has a tendency to deposit a conformal film to be like this. So, for example, if you're trying to create really tall capacitors, how do you line your metals? That's that's a chemical deposition. So here is an example where 3D was used to film metal to the vias, and then you fingernails it. And fingernails is chemical mechanical polishing. It actually is like huge mass, and they're actually grinding the paper, and there is an end point. So the moment, for example, the oxide is detected, it will stop. So it's a slurry that's grinding through the paper. And you'll be surprised that with this, like brute force method, you can still very, very finely tune the films and the mineralization of your processes. And of course, in all of this, RD, real-time defect analysis, keeps on happening. So at each step, you have to ensure you're not carrying forward any kind of defects, particle defects, where the next set of film can get deposited upon. And a single defect is capable of totally destroying a chip. So it has to be very, very carefully examined before proceeding to the next step. Okay, now let's talk about the resolution component. Resolution, we all hear, okay, you put back billion more transistors into a certain region, right? Into a small chip. What does resolution actually mean? Shrinking, right? Shrinking it to a smaller region. Now you can shrink the whole die to pack more of these small die to a certain region, or you can same area but you pack more of those features inside them. But at the end of the day, you have to meet our demands for AI. We have seen these days how it's trending. we have to get more speed, more performance, lower power into a small chip that we are designing. Dimensions we are talking about, CD, it's called a critical dimension of typically for the line. And then there is space. One line plus space makes pitch. For equal line space, it's called one line can be called as half pitch. So that's the standards nomenclature that we use for this. Okay, so wavelength. Lower the wavelength, smaller the resolution. You may have heard of 365 nanometer, and 248 nanometer picture film fluoride lasers or 193. These are industry standard wavelengths that are currently in market. Then there is extreme UV that we have suddenly dropped down to 13.5 nanometer wavelength. There can be another session on the UV tools. But overall, smaller the wavelength, better your, smaller your resolution, better your resolution, and smaller your feature size will be. Numerical aperture of your lens. So numerical aperture is how much light it can gather. More light, better resolution of your features. Now, of course, you can make the lens bigger and bigger, but you can only go as wide. So there are ways, and we're going to talk about it, how to improve the effective numerical aperture of your optical system. And it's dependent on the reflective index of the medium between the lens and your optical system. So this is the equation that we go by, Rayleigh's equation, where, as we discussed, it's directly dependent on the wavelength of your exposure light and indirectly dependent on the numerical aperture. R defines the resolution, how much CD feature you are looking at. K here is a very interesting constant. It's a process, the Rayleigh's process constant, and very, very intricate equation here, where it takes into effect your OPC, what kind of photoresist film you are using, what's your target pattern that you are trying to print, all of that. Theoretically, the lowest you can go with K value is 0.25. Okay, we can, like we discussed, we cannot go too much high on our NA, like you can keep making your lens wider. You can change, however, the reflective index of the medium between the lens and the photoresist film. Typically is air, but there can be multiple, like oil immersion, oil microscopy, heard about that. Oil, yes, as you can imagine, probably not very easy to handle on the industrial scale. However, water can be. And that's where we take into account, Dr. mentioned about contact angle. You look at the contact angle of water with the photoresist film, and then select accordingly and use water to actually increase the effective numerical aperture of your optical system. So with that, using that equation, you have suddenly changed your numerical aperture from say 1 closer to 1 to 1.5. That's a significant increase. That suddenly brings down the resolution. Just to give you a cheat sheet where we typically go with the feature size that can be blended with certain rules. 193 nanometer immersion absorbency can get you as low as about 38 nanometers. Really, really low. Now, if you see 193 to 13.5, there's a wide gap of wavelength that we are looking at. And actually, 25 years ago, there was push towards 157 nanometer also, but at that time, this immersion lithography came into effect, double patterning came into effect, where you would take the films and do some post-processing steps to actually shrink down the pitch. So 157 nanometer program was rolled off. But now 13.5 nanometer is back in evaluation.
overlay. I actually am currently in overlay group here. It's very important, like I said, to align whatever feature that we have printed at the bottom with the top. If there is a circuitry at the bottom, then at the top, and the VI is not meeting it, then effectively you have destroyed your device. So how do you ensure that below layer gets perfectly aligned with the top? For that, in the sky region we call, which is basically the area between that's empty real estate, which is just to saw. We use that area to place these marks at the bottom there and at the top there. And if you look at the top edges of that, these two squares inside each other, you measure them at the top and then check how much shift is there. And if the shift is more than the spec limit of your process, then you will work your wafers and try to fix it. First of all, do a root cause analysis, what caused the shift, and then fix it. This example only shows your X and Y shift, but they can transfer your shift. They can be magnification of your process. They can be, a rotational component, big expansion, heat level expansion. Multiple issues can happen, and you have to make sure that these lines are very well targeted, and we are pushing ourselves down to actually angstrom level of alignment here. Okay, now in the last part of my talk, I have a brief example of one of these devices. Resistors, diodes, transistors, capacitors, right? That's at the end of the day, these are electrical circuits, whether we are using it in sensors, whether we are using it in a GPU, anywhere. The basic component comes from the same. Method of fabrication is same. The use, the size is different. So I'm going to look at transistor. That's the most popular device out there. I'm sure that the electrical engineers in the room, they are very familiar with the structure, how there is a controller at the center that's basically an on and off switch, and how there is a source area which acts in the would be writing instructions, and then the drain area. That with various voltage applications, you can make it function to your desire. When we talk about a certain node, okay, this particular memory is of certain nanometer. This gate size is what we talk about of the transistor. Again, depending on whether it's N channel or P channel, depending on how you have implanted the base. A basic DRAM memory cell, so remember I showed you the array. One unit cell is basically a combination of one transistor, one capacitor with the word line and bit lines going through it. Very simple structure, scale is different. That's it, right? On that schematic is what you saw, a carton. This is what it actually looks like on paper. We ensure that every single of that billion transistor performs the way that you desired. There is no defect. There is exactly and right without any interference, and it lasts for a long time. So with that, here I just put together some of the sensors that are typically being used and what kind of devices are being used. It's a lot of innovation goes in there, and I'm sure with the curriculum that the group here has, they're more than capable of meeting our next demand for AI and a lot of factors driving our need for new chips, new technologies. Thank you very much for your attention, and we can take questions, I guess.
Any questions?
That's a lunch bell, I think.
The class, 1 o'clock.
Any questions? Thank you.
the innovation partner, can we reach the transistor size?
That's one of the innovation, yes, we can.
But now we are talking about new tests of electrons, right? So how do you ensure that there is every tenth electrons, right? There is a capability, a single atom. If you look at a hydrogen atom, then one electron. So your whole molecule structure is very dependent on the physics. So that's where actually quantum computing comes into play. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jain, for that insightful presentation. I would like to invite Professor Prabhakar Rao to felicitate Dr. Jain. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to call Professor Sanket Goyal to present a token of appreciation to Professor Prabhakar Rao.
Sir, please stay here. So, 1 minute, you stay here, we will felicitate Padma.
We'll be felicitating Padma Sai ma'am.
Look at this, maybe, whatever.
Thank you so much, sir. We will now break for lunch. I request everyone to proceed to the auditorium for your privilege and reassemble here by group. Thank you.
లేఅవుట్లో ఇది ఎందుకు మార్చారు సైడ్ బై సైడ్ స్టాక్ పెడితే ఇది వస్తుంది ఇది ఎంత వస్తుంది స్టాక్ పెడితే ఇది వస్తుంది ఏం పెట్టలేదు
Lunches. Lunches. Lunches served in the auditorium foyer. So in your ID chart, serve that. Okay. Take them.
Slides in the
So you can use that. Or you can put it in the place where we have taken photo inside it. Please.
This doesn't work.
Come back. By 2 o'clock, we will be starting our session by 2 o'clock.
Sensitive data. Right.
So in the lunchtime, you can network, you can talk to people, you can interact, you can have your Q&A session in the lunch.
ఇప్పుడే వాటి యూస్ కొడితే ఎందుకు సీట్ యూస్ అటు కూడా డైరెక్ట్ రాదు వికెట్ స్క్రీన్ చేయాలి అప్పటి నుంచి ఇప్పుడు వస్తుంది ఒక నిమిషం ఆగన్నా ఇవి ఒకసారి మౌస్తో ఒకసారి క్లిక్ చేయాలి ఇప్పుడు వస్తుంది
ఇంప్రూవ్ చేసేసి ఫండ్ చేయట్లేదు ఏం చేపిస్తాను లైన్
అంతే ఇది రాంది వేరేది ఎందుకు వస్తుంది ఇది రాకపోతే వేరేది ఎందుకు వస్తుంది నన్ను కూడా
ఎందుకు కొంచెం రాంగ్ చేయాలి
ఒక్క నిమిషం. అరే 1 minute. రే డూప్లికేట్ స్క్రీన్ కానీ సరే అదే బెటర్. ఎంత ఇదే బెటర్. ఇదే బెటర్. ఇదే బాగుంది.
మేడం అడిగా
మిమ్మల్ని మీ పేరు చెప్పారు.
రమేష్కి చెప్పు.
ఇది డిజైన్